In this film, I want to talk about making a master tracing. Now, taking a tracing seems really obvious and straightforward, and it certainly is with reduction printing. But when it comes to making multi-block prints, what I want to do is to make a master tracing that I'm going to use to map out all the different blocks for my lino cut, and I need those blocks to fit together perfectly. So it's really important that the master tracing is accurate. I also have to position it correctly so that the lino is centered and I'm not dealing with things that are wonky or crooked. So first of all, I just want to talk quickly about types of tracing paper. So I want to talk to you about a couple of different types of tracing paper. So this one here is straightforward tracing paper. It's made of paper, as the name suggests. And it's absolutely fine. I would use this for taking a tracing off a drawing to transfer onto a reduction lino cut print. No problem until it gets wet or damp. And when it gets wet or damp, it's going to distort really quickly and it can change size a little bit. Now, I found out about this sort of the hard way with Japanese woodblock printing, where having tracing paper that doesn't distort is absolutely crucial to the process. So I'm not going to use paper-based tracing paper for this project. I'm going to use a plastic tracing film. The stuff that I use is called Polydraw, and it's 050 is the size, the thickness that I'm using. I think that there are other films available besides Polydraw, but this is kind of the one that I'm using. And to show you it, it looks just like tracing paper, but because it's plastic, it's not going to change size, it's not going to distort if it gets damp in here. And so that means that when I make a master tracing for a multi-block print, and I use that master tracing to trace off each one of the blocks, I needn't worry that my tracing paper's changed size in between and I've lost my registration. So those are the two sorts of tracing papers that I'm going to use, but it's also important that I get my tracing in the right place. If you watched my previous film, you'll know that I made an adaptation to my registration device for hand printing, and that's because I'm working with a set size of paper. I'm working with the Origami Factory sample pack paper, which comes in a size smaller than the jig. So there's not a lot of wiggle room here, and I want to keep my lino cut as big as possible for the size of paper. So if I make sure everything is centered when I start, it means that when I have all the different blocks to make up my print, I know that all the blocks need to be centered as well and everything should line up. So I need to center my tracing. So here is my initial drawing, and I want to make sure that it goes right in the middle of my work. So what I've done is I've made myself a little template because I've got several tracings to make. I'm going to do a couple of versions of each drawing to turn into, we'll have probably 4 prints in all at the end of the day. So I need to make several tracings. So I've made a little jig here. So what I've got is everything is centered, and this red outline represents the size of the hole, and the inner black line is the size of the lino. And you'll see there's a little breathing space between the lino and the hole. That's so that when I'm taking the impression and I'm rubbing the back of the lino, I can rub right up to the edge of the lino and get a nice crisp impression without interfering with the card. So there's a little bit of breathing space there. So I know that when I transfer that frame onto my tracing, and this is the plastic film that doesn't distort at all, once my lino cut is traced, when I line up so that everything is sitting with those edge lines lining up with the green card, everything is centered so that it'll match the lino stuck down onto its different backing boards to fit into the frame. So I'll show you all the cutting the lino and centering it and all that kind of thing in another film. But for now, what I want to make the point is that I'm just getting everything centered. So when I take my tracing, let's put that out of the way. All I have to do is to make sure that the tracing is centered to the inside of the two frames. And then I know it's going to be in the right place when I put it in the frame. So the only other thing I would say is when you take a tracing, use a nice sharp pencil. I tend to use an H pencil or a harder pencil so that everything stays very crisp. And I make sure that I keep sharpening it, which is why I have this great big trusty electric pencil sharpener, because it's really easy just to keep on sharpening it. So I'm just going to take a direct tracing, and in the next film we'll be moving on with the project. So I hope that's helped, and I hope you'll join me again next time.